Hey everybody, welcome to today's moment of clarity. There's new evidence that the U.S. government's attempts to draw Venezuela into our hegemonic death grasp is failing more every day. And it's kind of wonderful to see. You know, it's not often I get to come to you with good news, but this is good news. And I'll get into the evidence, the new evidence that all, allies and partnerships and those supporting the U.S.-backed coup in Venezuela. It's all dwindling and disappearing and vanishing before our eyes. But let me give a little bit of backup here, a little bit of a backstory to what's going on in Venezuela. Some of you know about this, but I don't know if you know every detail, but not long ago, over a year ago, Juan Guaido, basically a nobody in Venezuela, declared himself the president without ever receiving a vote to be president in Venezuela. And if you've never seen a photo or a video, Juan Guaido is basically like, imagine every frat boy douchebag you've ever seen, and you just, like, from a distance, even without a word coming out of their face, you're just like, oh, fuck that guy. Just like from a distance, you knew, fuck that guy. That's Juan Guaido. He's the Venezuelan version of that. So, never received a single vote for president, but just walked out and declared himself, hey, everybody, I'm president. Oh, by the way, you notice? Look at this. This is my cabana wear, short sleeves. Boom. Yeah. That's the closest I get to fucking beach time cabana wear. Anyway, Juan Guaido declared himself president. The U.S. backed this shit. The U.S. has had our fingers on this all along. We're dying to collapse Venezuela. We'd love for just as many people as possible to, die or starve to death in Venezuela. That would make us feel really good because we're good people. And so they backed Juan Guaido doing this. Juan Guaido, for many of you, even if you've been following this, probably don't know this about him, that he went to George Washington University, right here in the good old US of A. He went to GW. He studied under Venezuelan economist Luis Enrique Berisbeitia. Berisbeitia was a part of the Venezuelan government when it was an oligarchy, before Chavez took over. So basically, Venezuela used to be run by an oligarchy. It was there's also a racial dynamic. The lighter-skinned Venezuelans were the ones in charge, almost without exception, and Chavez, obviously not one of the lighter-skinned ones. So there's also the racial dynamic. But anyway, Berisbeitia was an economist in the old oligarchic regime. Little baby Juan Guaido comes over, studies under him. Berisbeitia, also former executive director of the International Monetary Fund. The IMF. For those who don't know, they have their fucking tentacles and everything, and they, act like they're helping countries around the world when in fact they're putting them into, economic stranglehold. And so he used to be director of the IMF. He was also this is the euphemistic way of saying this, in the Venezuelan energy sector. He's an old oil guy, big oil. Worked for big oil back before Chavez nationalized the oil in Venezuela. For those who haven't really followed or read up on this, and you just hear the word nationalize and it sounds scary, that's called propaganda. Nationalizing the oil means that the oil taken out of the ground in Venezuela, who's that belong to? Well, many would say, it kind of belongs to everybody in the country, right? It's within the ground underneath Venezuela. But if you live in a corporate state, then that oil is taken out and given exclusively, the profits and everything given to a tiny number of individuals, as we do here in America, right? Where does all that fracking gas go when they get it out of the ground underneath your feet and my feet? Where do the profits go? Oh, they go to a tiny number of individuals. They don't go to the American people. Unless you're in Alaska, where actually some of the oil profits do go to the Alaskan people as a form of universal basic income. It's not a lot, but it's more than anywhere else in America. Anyway, used to be an oil guy. So that's who Juan Guaido, that's where Juan Guaido learns how to be a neoliberal coup meister. And the U.S. declares him president. He runs around Venezuela going, I'm president. Before he did that, 80% of Venezuelans never heard of the guy. I mean, imagine someone in the U.S. declares himself president. 80% of the country's never heard the guy's name. Runs around declaring himself president. More recently, in the past, in this year, Juan Guaido went on an international tour to try and drum up support that was funded by the U.S. And he went around trying to say, hey, help me overthrow Maduro in Venezuela. He was at the State of the Union. Remember that? Donald Trump goes, the president of Venezuela is standing right over there. And they point the camera at him. And Nancy Pelosi, the only time in the entire fucking speech, Nancy Pelosi stood up and clapped, jumped out of her seat and said, yes, Juan Guaido, the new president of Venezuela. That shows how much these two fucking corporate parties agree on tearing the world apart, on destroying nations that are not ours. We do not own these countries, okay? For those of you who were a little shady on whether America gets to own other countries, no. Latin America is not ours to fuck with whenever we see fit. But Nancy Pelosi jumped out of her seat. She and Trump should have just hugged and made out right then, just like, oh, we both want to destroy Venezuela. Let's make out on that. So goes on this tour, comes back to Venezuela. There's video of him returning to Venezuela after this please invade us tour. That's what it is, right? It's a guy from Venezuela saying, please come invade us. United States, please come into our country and basically take us over and make me your puppet president. So he comes back and he's booed out of the Caracas airport. There's a video of him. There's people just booing and hissing at him. Because he doesn't have the support of the Venezuelan people. So, and more recently, just a few months ago, they tried again to create a coup in Venezuela, this time by a hilariously failed invasion of Venezuela that was like 300 mercenaries. A couple of them were American, former, Green Berets or something. And it was put together by an American mercenary here in the U.S. who signed a contract with Juan Guaido. Juan Guaido's signature is seen on the contract, trying to create an invasion of Venezuela. And these guys didn't even get to the shore before they were captured by the Venezuelan Navy. They didn't even make it. Like, fishermen were like, dude, there's a motley group of fucking idiots coming in on boats. And so many people have called it the Bay of Piglets because they didn't quite reach the level of pigs. It's a Bay of Piglets. It did not go well. Not only did the Venezuelan invasion, not only do they look like idiots, Guaido looked like an idiot, but the U.S. looks like an idiot because we ostensibly supported this. Pompeo tweeted beforehand that, things are happening in Venezuela. So, the U.S. has claimed they didn't support it, but in fact, they did. They, behind closed doors, they gave the little go-ahead. But anyway, let's get to the breaking news, the more up-to-date news that for those of you who have been following this and maybe knew all of that stuff already. Initially, there was a group of 50 countries that supported Guaido as the coup president of Venezuela in order to help crush Venezuela, help collapse it into maybe a failed state the U.S. could take advantage of more easily. And it was 50 countries. Now, of course, those 50 countries are either puppet governments or governments that we somehow have an economic stranglehold over, or governments who owe us something. But whatever it is, 50 countries, some of them just legitimately despise Venezuela for various reasons, but whatever. 50 countries agreed to declare Guaido president. Now, that's still far short of the roughly 200 countries around the world. You're still not really getting above that 50% to be called the legitimate president. I mean, that wouldn't make you the legitimate president, but at least you'd have over 50% of the country supporting your coup. But anyway, it was 50 nations. Recently, on the latest announcement of the Committed to the Restoration of Democracy of Venezuela statement, we could only find the U.S. and Canada and by the way, Canada's involved in this shit too, Trudeau. U.S. and Canada could only find 19 countries remaining that support Juan Guaido as the president of Venezuela. It's dwindling. The international support to create this coup is slowly collapsing, like a flan or something, like a balloon that's not tied properly. You can hear the wind squealing out as this thing deflates. Here is the list of countries that continue to support this ridiculous coup in Venezuela. Albania, Australia, of course, Australia always got our back on this horse shit. Bahamas, Bolivia now because we created a coup there as well, right? We helped create that coup. Bolivia, which I should do a separate video on, their fascist coup government, which, ran into their state house and held up a giant Bible. So they're anti-freedom of religion as well. Their coup government, which did it through violence. They, arrested people, dragged mayors out of their homes, everything. They keep putting off their elections because they know the numbers show that if they had an election in Bolivia, that the same party who they just kicked out would win because that is the most popular party. MAS is what they're called, and they would win the election. So the coup government has to keep putting off the elections in order to avoid a legitimate democratic election. The U.S. doesn't talk about that, right? We claim to be for democracy. We run around, democracy. But we're not talking about how Bolivia won't have a fucking election because they know, the coup government knows that they would fucking lose. But the U.S. doesn't talk a lot about that. So you got Bahamas, you got Bolivia, you got Brazil, another country with a fascist leader who we never criticize, Bolsonaro, said the indigenous should be exterminated. He's setting fire to the Amazon. All those fires you see in the Amazon, which people call the lungs of the planet, those are not like just natural occurrences of forest fires. Some people like to say, look, forest fires are natural and they're good for the environment. It depends on where and when and how large. These fires going on in the Amazon are set in order, like people create these fires in order to clear out the forest so that they can have the land, so that they can mine, so they can clear out the indigenous, all these horrible reasons to create fires in the Amazon. So Brazil's supporting it. Canada, fuck you, Canada. Way to have our back on this horrible coup in Venezuela. Which, by the way, I haven't mentioned yet that the economic sanctions the U.S. put on Venezuela, the old number was that those economic sanctions have killed 40,000 people within just a couple of years. But now many are saying the current number, updating for the last couple of years, is more like 100,000 people in Venezuela have died from our economic sanctions, from our decision to not let medicine in, to tie up the actual funds that Venezuela has, billions of dollars worth of gold that are held in Britain, that Britain, thanks to us, telling them to, will not release, will not give to Venezuela. The Bank of England will not give them their money. But various things like that. 40 to 100,000 people have died in Venezuela thanks to our economic war on them. And Canada, right there with us. They act all polite in Canada. You notice that? They say things like sorry and my bad. I don't know if they say my bad. That may be a U.S. thing. But anyway, they say sorry a lot, and they seem very polite, and they don't yell as much as we do, or at least as much as I do. But meanwhile, behind our backs, or no, they've got our backs. But anyway, the government of Canada continues to do all of the awful horseshit, or at least support it, that the America is involved in. How often do you see Canada stand up and say, fuck no, America, enough with your hegemony, enough with your economic destruction of other lands that are poor, that basically just harm poor people and those who are ill and those who are elderly. Like, fuck you, America. Where is that coming from the Canadian government? I don't mean the Canadian people. I have heard that from Canadian people. And then at the end they go, I'm sorry, but fuck you, America. Sorry, but fuck you. So that's the people, but not the government. The government has our back on all this shit. Canada, Chile, don't even want to get into that. Colombia, another one, Jesus Christ. Costa Rica, the Dominican Republic, Ecuador. Ecuador, of course, is the fucking Trojan horse of Lenin Moreno, who took over, seemed to be that he was going to be, many thought he was going to be left-wing, and then he immediately turned to the right, sold out Julian Assange, invited the British police in to arrest Assange, and within a couple of weeks of that, got a over $4 billion loan from the IMF. IMF already came up in this episode. But yeah, you don't think those were related, do you? The IMF giving him $4 billion and at the same time turning over Julian Assange? No, sure, unrelated. El Salvador, Estonia, Georgia, Guatemala. Yeah, it's quite a history of Guatemala, quite a history in these next two, Haiti, Honduras, Hungary, Israel. I don't know if we have any history with Israel. I don't know if we've ever done bad shit with them and helped them to persecute a people or, supported them in their shooting children with sniper bullets during the Great March of Return. I don't know if there's anything there. This is the first I'm actually hearing of Israel. Kosovo, Latvia, Lithuania, Panama. History there, too. I mean, history with all these, really. U.S. history of destruction and making sure there can't be any sort of socialist movement, any sort of movement that doesn't give in to everything America wants, any sort of movement that goes against our central banking system. We've got to stop all of that. But let me get through this list real quick. Paraguay, Peru, Republic of Korea, St. Lucia, Ukraine. Yeah, nothing going on in the Ukraine. Ask Joe Biden about that. And the UK. The United Kingdom always got our back for these coups, for these various destructions of peoples and countries that are not ours to own and destroy. And it's gotten so much to a point, the support of this coup in Venezuela, which, I don't want to spend 45 minutes on it, but the reason we want to collapse Venezuela and have wanted to since Chavez and Bush tried, Obama tried, now Trump's trying, is because, A, we've got to crush them because they practice some degree of socialism. They have, since Chavez, extreme poverty has been cut by 70%. Poverty has been cut by 50%. There's very little homeless. The university is covered. And look, this is not saying everything is fine in Venezuela. They're fucking incredible hardships, much of it coming from our economic war on them. But there's also other forms of problems in the country. I mean, acting like a country should not be invaded and destroyed by the United States of America is not saying that the country is perfect. I love how people like to conflate those two. They're like, yeah, like I say, like, oh, we shouldn't collapse that country. Let's let them have their self-determination and let them decide what they should do in that country and what kind of government they want and whether they want to end poverty there. Or have literacy for everyone. Let's let them decide that. Like I say something like that, or anyone does, and then you have these fucking people that come in and go, yeah, but this government official is corrupt. Or yeah, but didn't you hear about this thing where this guy is corrupt? It's like, yeah, that's fucking governments, okay? Unfortunately, there are corrupt people, and it sucks. Okay? That saying that we shouldn't, the United States has no right to destroy a country is not saying that everything is always perfect in that because fucking everyone's farting rainbows and fucking riding around on unicorns. Yeah, it's not. No, of course not. But the support of Venezuela has collapsed to such a point that even the Democrats, a few Democrats are questioning our cooing of Venezuela. Senator Chris Murphy, during a recent questioning of Elliot Abrams, the fucking incredible war criminal, that guy's covered in blood. The questioning of Elliot Abrams, Senator Chris Murphy, a Democrat, said,
we just have to be clear that our Venezuela policy over the last year and a half has been an unmitigated disaster. And if we aren't honest about that, then we can't self-correct.
Now, here's the irony of this. It's amazing to see them actually criticizing our attempted coup in Venezuela, to see the Democrats, who are as war hungry as the Republicans, criticizing the coup. Now, Chris Murphy, as a Democrat, is criticizing the coup because he wants the coup to work. He's like, there's got to be a better way to fuck up this country. But still, it means the support for what's going on now is dwindling. So at least there's that. Murphy continued to declare that the U.S. support for Venezuela's opposition forces has handed Maduro an opportunity to label Guaido an American patsy, while hardening support for his government around the world, for Maduro's government around the world. So really, Chris Murphy's upset that by being fucking incompetent, the Trump administration has actually solidified the support for a socialist government in Venezuela. So I'm not saying Chris Murphy or any of the Democrats are a good guy, good men and women on this topic, but it is amazing to see even the support there crumble and collapse.
First, we thought that getting Guaido to declare himself president would be enough to topple the regime. Then we thought putting aid on the border would be enough.
If you remember that fucking catastrophe when they had they put a fucking truck. Because first of all, they created the propaganda that half this shit was needed. They were like, people need toothpaste in Venezuela. And then you have reporters like Max Blumenthal going down there, just standing in front of a fucking wall of toothpaste and being like, they have toothpaste. Yes, there's crazy inflation down there because of our economic war on them, but there is toothpaste. Not to mention, they have a program that does deliver food to those who need it. Here in the U.S., I believe we arrest people in a lot of states for handing food to those who need it. Like literally people are arrested for giving food to hungry people. And then they go, and then the cities where they do that, they go, well, it's not sterile. It's not hygienic to give out food. Are you fucking kidding me? Have you seen what goes on around a stadium when the fucking game is going on, like a fucking Super Bowl stadium? You know, unhygienic. Have you seen? There's just mountains of garbage. There's people like giving birth to babies inside porta potties. It's just fucking horrific. Just garbage everywhere. For half sausages just thrown around, and then a drunk guy picks it up and eats it out of a puddle of God knows what. You know, it's like a puddle of antifreeze, and he's like, "Ooh, kind of sweet." It's revolting what goes on around concerts, stadiums, lines of porta potties that people can't get into, so they just take a shit on the outside of the door. Like, fuck you. It's not safe because it's dirty. Yeah, you just think homeless people are dirty. Arresting people for giving out food. It's fucking insane. But I've never heard that. I've never heard them shutting down a concert because it wasn't clean enough. Shutting down a fucking festival where people are, pooping in the salad bar. Oh, it wasn't clean enough. They don't give a shit. They only give a shit when you're giving out free food. So they put that aid there. They pretended like they needed some sort of, they got to get the aid in. And it was a fucking massive catastrophe, okay? They claimed that the trucks were set fire by Maduro's forces when later even the New York fucking Times admitted that the fires were set by the quote-unquote rebels or those rebelling or whatever. It was such horseshit. Richard Branson standing outside having a concert for hope. What a propaganda shitfest. Anyway, continue the quote.
Then we tried to sort of construct a kind of coup in April of last year, and it blew up in our face when all the generals that were supposed to break with Maduro decided to stick with him in the end. I think this is just a prescription to get stuck in a downwards spiral of American policy from which we cannot remove ourselves.
Ha! Doesn't that describe all American policy? Anyway, that's Chris Murphy, Democrat. He said that during a hearing where they were talking to Elliot Abrams, a war criminal. But to sum up some deeper points here, we try to create a coup in Venezuela. And even if you wanted to believe the horse shit about we want to help the people there. It's funny. We only want to help the people where there is either resources we can steal or there's the threat of the good example, meaning they have thrown off their unfettered capitalist chains and there's some level of socialism. And we find that so horrifying that we have to destroy that country. So those are the only places where we feel this need to go help the people, right? Are we invading Brazil? Are we invading the Philippines where Duterte is killing everyone who does drugs and torturing people? No, we only feel the need to invade or economically collapse countries where we can steal their resources, like Bolivia. Bolivia has some of the most lithium in the world, and now we need more lithium than ever. And by the way, lithium is needed most by things like Tesla's cars and lithium batteries and stuff like that. And when someone complained about this, to Elon Musk on Twitter, Elon Musk said, "We will coup who we want to. Deal with it." Look it up. He said it. So he deleted it later. Apparently that didn't go over too well with the shareholders, I guess. But so we don't invade countries. We only invade countries where we can steal their resources or there's some sort of geopolitical power we can gain from it. There was actually, this is back when The Guardian was a relatively good source, like 10 years ago or something. The Guardian actually had a study in it that I think it was, you're like 900, a country is 900% more likely to have outside forces invade them or be involved in their conflicts if there's oil reserves. So that was 10 years ago. Oil is going out a little bit, but not much. In fact, we just signed a deal with certain factions, I guess I should say, factions of Syria to steal their oil. So we just inked a deal on that. U.S. stealing oil from Syria. Didn't you know that was just over the horizon? So, but yeah, we also provide aid to 70% of dictatorships around the world. So that shows you whether America is actually standing up for democracy, standing up for freedom, standing up for actual, a genuine leadership in any of these countries, actual democracy, actually people voting and having their voices heard. We don't give a fuck about any of that. That is all horseshit propaganda. So anytime you hear, it doesn't matter if it's Fox News, CNN, NBC, ABC, CBS, NPR, I don't give a shit. Anytime you hear any of them say, we need to worry about the democracy in this country, you should know something is up, all right? And if you just keep looking, you'll find out what it is. Anytime they say, we have to go in there for democracy, there is a deeper reason, because we have never once gotten involved in a country just because we wanted to see their people vote. And in fact, in most of these countries, when we do get in, what do? We rig the vote. Like in Bolivia, they just say, hey, we're not having a vote again and again and again. And we go, who cares? So apparently we don't care about democracy suddenly now that we've gotten our coup that we wanted in Bolivia. But we just promote this neoliberal agenda around the world and this economic hegemony that is just, it's proven disastrous in every regard. Our environment globally is collapsing, and we have nothing to say about it. The inequality is through the roof, as I talked about on the last episode yesterday. It's unbelievable. And we are fine with all of it. We never even speak about it. If we actually cared about these people, which is what our propaganda claims, then we would talk about this inequality. You want to know the level of inequality? And I actually did not mention this number on yesterday's Moment of Clarity. If you want to hear about inequality and Jeff Bezos and everything, that's on yesterday's Moment of Clarity. But I did not mention this number because I hadn't actually done this calculation yet. But so let's say you buy a shirt on Amazon and it's made by garment workers in Bangladesh, right? A lot of your shirts and clothing say made in Bangladesh. That garment worker on average makes $400 a year. That's the annual salary for a Bangladeshi garment worker. $400. They work fucking 12-hour days or more, sometimes 20-hour days. They are getting paid by the garment usually. They are slaves, like full-on near slavery in these garment factories, getting paid like a nickel for a garment or whatever. They make $400 a year. How long does it take Jeff Bezos? You bought that shirt on Amazon. It gets to you. You go, oh, my nice shirt. How long does it take Jeff Bezos to make that annual salary? That garment worker that actually made the shirt, made the thing, How long does it take Jeff Bezos to earn that amount of money? You want to guess? I'll wait while you guess. Nope. No, you're wrong. What's that one you said over there? Nope, that's wrong too. It's under a second. Under a second. Every second of every day, Jeff Bezos makes, quote unquote, earns, bullshit, but gets in his bank account the equivalent of the annual salary of a Bangladeshi garment worker. And that level of inequality is thanks in no small part due to us pushing this neoliberal death spiral around the world. So, here it is again with Venezuela. But I did come to you with some good news. The Venezuelan support system for this coup by Juan Guaido and others, the U.S.-backed coup, is down to 19 countries. Used to be 50. So at the beginning of this thing, you had 50 shithead neoliberal countries saying that Juan Guaido is the president. Down to 19. Let's watch that number keep dwindling. Okay, folks, I hope you enjoyed this. Please come back almost every day. I'm trying to do these, so please come back almost every day and watch them at youtube.com/momentofclarity. If you're on Facebook right now or you're on YouTube, make sure you click subscribe. Make sure you click the bell icon next to subscribe, because if you just click subscribe, they won't tell you about the videos. Click the bell. And thank you so much. And join the email list, because that's one of the only ways I get to tell you guys about the videos. The email list you can join in America by texting the word redacted to 33777. You can join from other countries just by going to leecamp.com. Keep fighting.